Welcome. This video is predicting that there will be a black swan, unexpected shock event in the stock market on February 25th, 2026. The date that this video is posted on the social media platform that you are watching it on proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time. As does this time-stamped email. As we can see here, this email was composed on February 18th. And as does this forensic notes PDF document. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. Okay, so a black swan event is an expected shock, something that is shocking, an event that is unexpected by most people, not all people. This term, black swan event, is often associated with a financial event, but not always. So there were, for example, stock market declines. The best example probably of a black swan event in the financial market that occurred in one day would be Black Monday in 1987. When the Dow lost its record amount in terms of percent in one day, which was almost 23%. The Dow lost on that one day. It was a black swan event. All right, welcome. This video is predicting that the stocks on Wall Street will collapse in a crash in a one-day event here, a black swan event, an unexpected shock to the stock market on precisely February 25th, 2026. I'm also predicting that this will be the beginning of the biggest crash in all of history. That's another prediction as well. To predict this, to predict the biggest crash in all of history, beginning on a precise date with this opening crash event, this one-day event here on February 25th is quite something. But for the hardcore agnostic atheist that still won't believe it, the reasons that I'll explain in this video will prove that this is from God. Because no one is creative enough to concoct these reasons in their own imagination, let alone for doing this for many dates in the hopes that someday there'll be a black swan event that will begin the biggest crash in all of history. If you believe that, then you are the crazy person, because only a crazy person would do such a thing, which makes you the crazy person. That said, let's get into it. You'll see here, this reason that I'll be explaining in this video will prove that this is from God, and it'll prove when this prediction comes to pass, because of the reason here, the righteous Christian God of the Bible. No other God, no Islam God, no mixture of New Age or Eastern religion with the God of the Bible, none of that. The righteous Christian God of the Bible. Now here we can see this timestamp on this email proves that this email was composed before February 25th. If you're skeptical for some reason, please email me and I'll forward this to you. So there's this TV show Wednesday, which is a spin-off of the Addams Family TV show, which was created after a comic. So anyway, everyone is familiar, I'm sure, with the Addams Family. Well, the daughter in the Addams Family, her name is Wednesday. And there is a appeal for this character among young women today because she's dark. There's just an appeal. There's a dark element to it. Anyway, so the TV show Wednesday had its first episode on November 23rd, 2022. That show aired on a Wednesday, exactly 1,190 days before February 25th, 2026, which is a Wednesday. This 1190 days is also exactly 170 weeks. And I'll explain why there is this enthusiastic 3 exclamation marks right here upon this discovery. Okay, so exactly 1190 days. The reason for this is that the show takes place, the reason for this connection is that the show takes place at a private school in Jericho, Vermont, exclamation mark, which according to Wikipedia is named after the ancient city of Jericho, which is described in the Bible. The Israelites, led by Joshua, which is, and this Jericho city is described in the book of Joshua. The Israelites, led by Joshua, who died at the age of 110, according to the book of Joshua, marched around the walls of security of Jericho before they collapsed in God's judgment, which is symbolized by the number 9. That's what's contained in this 1190 number. Because 1190 days is 1100 days, which since it's Joshua, who died at 110, who led the Israelites around the walls of security before they collapsed in God's judgment, which is why on 9/11, 110 stories collapsed and engendered a small earthquake on Wall Street that cracked the foundation of Federal Hall. Furthermore, the towers were right next to Wall Street. And Joshua, who died at 110, led the Israelites around the walls of security. So 1190 days is 1100 days plus 90 days, which hints at 9/11. Wall Street was named after the 9-foot-high wall of security that the Dutch built to keep the British and the Indians out. So what I'm going to do here is play a short clip explaining the reason why God pairs the numbers 9 and 110, or in this case 1100, together in his signs. It's amazing, and I'll be right back. Jesus' official arrival into Jerusalem and first coming was on the 10th day of the first month in the Hebrew calendar. This is 110, and this hints at the number 110. In the book of Joshua, the date on which the Hebrews crossed over the Jordan River and officially entered the Promised Land was also on the 10th day of the first month, which is 110 and hints at the number 110. Jesus' first coming is symbolized by the number 110. This is why on 9/11, the 2 towers that collapsed were each 110 stories high. The collapse of 2 towers that were 110 floors was symbolism for Jesus' second coming. In the book of Joshua in the Bible, Joshua died at the age of 110. Joshua led the Hebrews around the security walls of the ancient city of Jericho before they collapsed in judgment. On 9/11, the twin towers, which were 110 stories high, collapsed, engendering a small earthquake that cracked the foundation of Federal Hall, where George Washington was inaugurated, on Wall Street. President George Washington was a founding father, and his inauguration as the first president was a symbolic founding of the nation. The cracking of the foundation of Federal Hall on Wall Street on 9/11 symbolized America's foundation in God being cracked. This is because after Washington's inauguration at Federal Hall, he then walked down Wall Street to Trinity Chapel, where he consecrated the nation to God, saying that if the nation were to ever turn away from God, it would lose its blessings. After 9/11, Trinity Chapel was called the Miracle Chapel, as it was the only building at Ground Zero to have survived. It did not even suffer a broken window due to the 70-year-old sycamore tree that was uprooted as it sheltered the chapel from the falling debris. In commemoration of this sycamore tree outside the chapel, today there is a huge bronze statue of its roots. In other words, through the 9/11 events, God was pointing to Trinity Chapel and Washington's covenantal consecration of the nation to God at Trinity Chapel. Wall Street is named after the original 9-foot-high wall of security that the Dutch built to keep the British and the Indians out. The collapse of 110 floors that cracked the foundation of Federal Hall on Wall Street, which is named after a 9-foot-high security wall, hints at 9/11 and points to Joshua, who died at 110, and the Hebrews that marched around the walls of security before they collapsed in judgment. 110 floors and the 9-foot-high wall of security that was Wall Street points to George Washington's march down Wall Street to Trinity Chapel that symbolized a covenantal relationship between America and God. To this effect, Washington's march down Wall Street with the New York Stock Exchange, the building that symbolizes America's financial strength, located on one side of the street, and Federal Hall, the building that symbolizes America's governmental and institutional strength on the other side, also pointed to the cutting rights ritual practiced in ancient Israel that was used in Abraham's and God's ritual walk in their covenant that is described in Genesis 15. A covenant that symbolizes Washington's walk down Wall Street and his covenantal consecration of the nation to God at Trinity Chapel. There are only two nations in the history of the world that were founded not on ethnicity or territory or language, but were founded solely for God, Israel and America. In every daily Bible that is divided into 365 readings, a portion of the Bible for each day of the year, on every September 11th, everyone that reads this standard 365-day Bible reads the passage in the book of Isaiah, chapter 9, verse 11, which is the judgment warning on ancient Israel, which was a raid on ancient Israel by the world's first recorded terrorists, the ancient Assyrians. And the terrorists on 9/11 were from the same part of the world. The Assyrians raided the northern kingdom of Israel first, and then later the southern kingdom of Judah was destroyed, which is why the terrorists on 9/11 hit the North Tower first, followed 17 minutes later by the South Tower. And this Isaiah 9:11 passage includes a mention of collapsed buildings and uprooted sycamore trees. On the morning after 9/11, Senate Majority Leader Tom Daschle gave a speech to the world regarding the events on 9/11. He quoted the passage in Isaiah 9:11, not realizing it was a judgment warning on the ancient Jews. He quoted how, after the raid by the Assyrians, the Hebrews did not repent to God, but instead vowed defiantly to rebuild and become stronger than before. And so, like the ancient Jews, America did not repent after the judgment warning, and instead defied God even more. And so, like ancient Israel, America will now be destroyed. This is why, in God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, he frequently pairs together the number 110 and the number 9. Both of these numbers symbolize God's judgment on the nation, and paired together, these numbers point to the big judgment warning that was 9/11. As well, these numbers paired together in God's signs and connections serve as a witness confirmation that the perceived signs and connections are from God. After the judgment warning of 9/11, America was given a period of grace to repent and turn back to God, or else judgment destruction. In the Bible, a 20-year period symbolizes a complete period of waiting. Jacob waited 20 years to get possession of his wives and property. The children of Israel waited 20 years to be freed of Jabin, the king of Canaan, when they were freed from bondage by Deborah and Barak. The Ark of the Covenant waited 20 years in Kiriath Jearim, and Solomon spent 20 years building his home and the house of God. On the 20th anniversary of the buildings that collapsed on 9/11 was the sudden collapse of America's presence in Afghanistan, And the iconic scene of this was the US Air Force plane leaving the airport in Afghanistan. And the big number on the side of its plane is 1109, which hints at 110 and 9. Okay, so 1190 days here between the Wednesday show and Wednesday, February 25th, and the predicted crash on Wall Street. And again, that's relevant because of the show taking place in Jericho, which is named after the Bible, where the walls of security collapsed. We're talking about a collapse on Wall Street. That's the prediction, 1190 days exactly after the show Wednesday that takes place in Jericho. On 9/11, the 110 stories collapsed and engendered a small earthquake that cracked the foundation of Federal Hall on Wall Street, named after the 9-foot-high wall of security that the Dutch built to keep the British and the Indians out. 1190 days is also exactly 170 weeks, which hints at the number 17. On 9/11, 2 planes struck the 2 towers 17 minutes apart before they collapsed in God's judgment. This 1190 days connection from the show Wednesday that takes place in the town named after the city in the Bible in which the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment implies that stocks on Wall Street will collapse on Wednesday, February 25th. The description of the rise of King Apollyon from the bottomless pit in Revelation in the Bible, chapter 9, verse 11, as in 9/11, as in 1190 days, is in the context of the collapse of the walls of security, the wall of security between the demonic and earthly realms. Because King Apollyon rises from the bottomless pit after the collapse of the wall of security between the demonic and earthly realms that's described in the context of Revelation 9:11 that describes King Apollyon. That's why God uses Revelation 9:11 to symbolize all of this. And in fact, 9/11 in 2001 hinted at Revelation 9:11. I'll just say this, for example. The bottomless pit is opened with a key that opens a door, and the 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is the symbol for a door. This is why the 4th plane on 9/11 crashed and killed 44 people in a 40-acre pit because it crashed at a 40-degree angle, 40 plus 40 miles outside of Pittsburgh. A 40-acre pit, 40 plus 40 miles outside of Pittsburgh, the city of bridges, and it is a bridge that the demons will cross over into the earthly realm when the door is opened, which is symbolized by the number 4 in God's signs here. And it was in Pennsylvania, in a field near Pittsburgh, because that's where the pioneering zombie movie was made, Night of the Living Dead. That's why the White House is located at 4x400 Pennsylvania Avenue. Because the 44th president will be president and preside as the president over this period in which the demonic realm invades the earthly realm, which is currently being symbolized, by the way, with the invasion over the border wall of security of the illegal aliens. And the demons also, on that note, will pretend to be aliens. Anyway, there is this dark element, as I mentioned in the beginning, to the show Wednesday and the Addams Family. It hints at this coming zombie pandemic that's symbolized by Revelation 9:11 and the collapse of the wall of security between the earthly realm and the demonic realm, which is why from the show Wednesday, it is exactly 1190 days to this predicted crash, collapse On Wall Street,